Chatter certainly seems to be intensifying. Washington, it seems, is preparing for a war in Eastern Europe. The White House sending lethal aid, a lot of it, to Ukraine all of a sudden. The Pentagon with 8,500 troops who are now on high alert, American troops, saying Russia at this point seems to have no intention of de-escalating the situation. Today, the president seemed in no mood to talk about it.
I had a very, very, very good meeting, total unanimity with all the European leaders. We'll talk about it later. Thank you.
Well, we'll see about the unanimity part of that. So what will the White House do here? Any kind of conflict over Ukraine will no doubt be incredibly unpopular in this country. Though there are pundits out there that are saying that it would make the perfect distraction for a White House that has just suffered through a disastrous first year. As far as our allies are concerned and all that unanimity, Europe's biggest player, Germany, wants nothing to do with this whole situation. That's a problem. This is a nightmare for Germany because it was all so predictable. Of course, they fought for a long time to get a nice pipeline with Russia and all of its oil and gas. We all understood, the rest of the world understood, the vulnerability of letting Russia have that much control over Germany and the EU. But it was all ignored because cheap energy sounded so good to an increasingly liberal country that wants to virtue signal on climate change the way Germany does. Remember, it's okay to burn fossil fuels as long as you don't drill for them yourself. Just ask the Biden White House. They're kings of that game. Phasing out nuclear power in Germany and more recent moves to cut reliance on coal has left the Germans totally reliant on Russian fuel. Not just for heating in a cold winter like this, but also power generation. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline is going to be fueling Germany for a long time. And so now it's really hard to get tough when Russia does something like this. And notice just how fast it happened. I mean, how perfect it all was. Russia's winning. Here's former President Trump at the NATO summit in London in 2018. Trump was hated at events like this by people that attend events like this because Trump spoke truth to his delusional left-wing European counterparts.
I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened. But Germany is totally controlled by Russia because they were getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. And you tell me if that's appropriate, because I think it's not. And I think it's a very bad thing for NATO, and I don't think it should have happened.
3.5 years ago. For 4 years, Trump sat in office and Russia was on its best behavior, let's be honest. And yet the media and the left told you that Trump was Russia's puppy. And now we learn just how ridiculous all that speculation was yet again. In reality, Vladimir Putin probably couldn't wait to get Trump out of the White House so he could restart the mission that he started under Obama, expanding his empire. Let's go back a couple of years. Here was Biden. This is how Biden got into the White House, making promises, making hilarious promises, so pathetic, just like this one. Listen to this and try not to laugh.
Because Putin knows if I am president of the United States, his days of tyranny and trying to intimidate the United States and those in Eastern Europe are over. We need someone to take office this time around who on day one can stand on the world stage, command the respect of world leaders from Putin to our allies.
Command Putin and our allies. Well, you're not commanding Putin, and Germany's just kind of blowing you off, and they're having meetings without you. Our presence on the world stage is unmatched. Was there one single thing that Biden said that he would do that he actually did or actually even could do? Think about that for a second in the wake of what we've seen for the past year. It's astonishing. The U.S. State Department over the weekend ordered the evacuation of family members of diplomats and authorized the departure of some U.S. government employees from Ukraine and the general region. The State Department warned it will not be in a position to evacuate U.S. citizens from Ukraine in the event of a Russian invasion, saying U.S. citizens currently present in Ukraine should plan accordingly. The removal of diplomat families is being seen as an escalation by the Biden White House. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Oleg Nikolenko tweeting this out. While we respect the right of foreign nations to ensure safety and security of their diplomatic missions, we believe such a step to be a premature one and an instance of excessive caution. Yes, the Ukrainians say, you're pulling your people out way too soon. We're not in a war yet. What are you doing freaking out? Everybody just relax. The Biden White House, likely mortified of another Afghanistan just 6 months later, is telling people to get out now, but their panicked evacuation, along with sending lethal aid, putting thousands of troops at the ready, could be escalating a situation that may not have happened, something that may have potentially just fizzled out over time. Think about it. The Russians have been sitting on Ukraine's border for months now. Now suddenly the White House is saying an invasion is imminent? It escalated pretty quick. When asked about the number of Americans left in Ukraine, the State Department had no idea because we're not being tracked by the government. There's no way to know how many Americans are in Ukraine, and a lot of people complain about that. I don't see that as a problem. We shouldn't be tracking where people go all over the world. We don't need to know how many people are in Afghanistan or how many people are in Ukraine. But whoever is there, the government says, needs to figure out their own travel and get out now.
If Americans are still in Ukraine and things start happening with Russia, are they pretty much on their own?
Well, we are conveying very clearly now that now is the time to leave and that there are means to do that. There is not an intention or a plan for any military evacuation.
So they're saying it's time to bail, time to get out. Democrats, of course, spent years turning Russia into a much mightier adversary than they truly are. It's not that impressive of a country, even though it's massive in size, actual physical land size. Those with common sense know the real problem America has, of course, is China. But it seems our leaders are hell-bent on picking this fight over Ukraine anyway, and just kind of ignoring China the way we have for the last 30 or 40 years. But didn't we just learn this lesson over the summer with Afghanistan? Did we not just realize the flaws in policing the world? Impeachment whistleblower Alexander Vindman, you know who he is. He appeared on MSNBC on Friday, making the most dire warning we have heard. Vindman apparently thinks that we are on the brink of World War III.
It's important to note that I think we're basically just on the cusp of war. I think it's all but certain in my mind that there's going to be a large European war on the order of magnitude of World War II, with air power, sea power, massive ground forces offensives.
I think somebody wants a war. So Vindman, of course, was the whistleblower on the Trump-Ukraine phone call. Impeachment number 2 was all about him. An American, Vindman was actually born, guess where? Ukraine, in Kiev, and fought in the U.S. military. So he's from the nation in question and is attracted to warfare naturally. Obviously, in his mind, it's clearly the right choice to do everything we can to protect Ukraine, including probably sending thousands, tens of thousands of Americans into Ukraine to fight the Russians. But is it worth it to anybody else? Ukraine is a terribly corrupt, drab, post-Soviet nation. I've been there. A country that has very little impact on your quality of life. Now, what Vladimir Putin is doing here is obviously wrong, but let's be honest. It's not like he's making this move against France, at least not at this point. Ukraine is not a NATO ally. It is a country that is slowly moving in the right direction, but is still corrupt as hell. Is it worth a war? Maybe in Washington right now it is. Polling indicates this White House and Democrat Party are in serious trouble. An NBC poll indicating 72% of Americans think that the country is heading in the wrong direction. Even Chuck Todd, one of the Biden cheerleaders who put this president in office with his blatant favoritism during the campaign, has now turned on old Joe.
Our new NBC News poll suggests Mr. Biden does need a reset because he's lost his identity a bit. He's no longer seen as competent and effective. He's no longer seen as a good commander-in-chief, or perhaps most damaging, as easygoing and likable. In fact, just 5% of adults say Mr. Biden has performed better than expected.
So that's why everybody's talking about the movie Wag the Dog right now, if you remember that one. So the question is, what is happening with Ukraine? What is going to happen with Ukraine? And is this situation being perhaps escalated, at least somewhat intentionally, by a White House that's maybe desperate for a distraction?